Continuing this week, where I'm reviewing freely available 3D movies, today I'm looking at 4 short films from Portuguese filmmaker Edgar Pera, or probably Pera. I don't know. The first movie I took a look at was The Cavern, which has some minor nudity and major lunacy. It entirely takes place in a small theater and uses a fascinating technique of projecting the screen onto the seats and the audience, watching the movie take on the shape of its destination. Especially in 3D, creates this surreal sense of it taking over its viewers. You can almost feel the projector wrapping the audience in a hypnotic cocoon, rendering them little more than zombies, getting their life sucked out of them. As with the other films I look at in this review, this one makes great use of a fisheye lens in a 3D context, which does wonders at exaggerating the stereo effect within small areas. It's a rare example of the 3D dollhouse effect, which is stereo making things look small and toy-like, being used for drama and not as a side effect that needs to be overlooked. The halls and the theater itself have this deadly claustrophobic feel, emphasizing the growing madness that confinement brings. I took it all as analogy of the theater being something of a box that we enter, but perhaps never really leave. I'm not sure it's being depicted as a trap or more like a place of refuge, of hiding, perhaps a bomb shelter from life itself. But the irony here is that it doesn't protect the viewer from what they fear, but actually seems to amplify it. They are seen living with animals and becoming increasingly more like them, indulging in decadence and growing increasingly mad, faithful only to the source of their madness. Our second movie is a fantastic little fishing documentary called Portuguese Sea. Black and white and 3D make for such a great companion. For me, it seems to step up the clarity of the moment, and this made for a great experience, especially watching the fishing nets. Nets are something that don't always translate in a 3D conversion. They are frequently treated out of necessity as a blob. Seeing nets in true 3D is a bit of a treat. Now, although it's a modern movie, the hands-on laborious work of a fishing vessel made this feel like something out of the past. I had inadvertently watched the version without the English subtitles, then gave it a rewatch with the captioned version. To my surprise, I think I enjoyed it more not knowing what was being said. It sounded like some unspoken poetic language of the sea from which no human narrative could compete. I felt I was witnessing something that could not be understood by reading or watching. This was language that spoke in experience. I could observe it all day, but never understand a moment of it unless I was in that boat. And not just in that boat, but living or dying by that boat, a boat that is neither amusement or distraction, but life's very companion. Next, we arrive at Sapiens, which actually was theatrically released as part of an anthology movie from 2013 called 3x3D. Now, to be honest, I wasn't too sure I wanted to sit through this when it started, as at first glance it seemed to be a retread of what I had already seen in The Cavern. To a degree, it does revisit some of those ideas, but I'm glad I didn't shy away from this one. This one was bug nuts crazy, especially in the later half, and was perhaps the most entertaining of the 4 movies on this playlist. By far, it features the more extreme 3D of the films, several sideshow-style pop-outs. This pointing finger is an interesting moment to pause on, walk around the room and look at from different angles. It will follow you. And this guy's head looks like a popsicle and a nose you could hang a coat on. I'm guessing, again, the extreme look is thanks to the 3D fish-eyed lens. It's very effective at bringing a person out front and center. And I think what helps with many of these shots is they're often layered on top of a separately filmed background which has more moderate stereo, so it doesn't twist the background out of frame and cross our eyes. There are actually many really good moments of overlaying different 3D images. In regular stereo movies, you don't often see much collage work, so it's a treat to experience it here. Different 3D images on top of each other creates a similar sensation to that of looking into water or through a window with a slight transparent reflection, worlds within worlds. Many shots are seen through a frame meant to represent a theater screen. Looking into a screen within a screen creates a curious false negative Z area where objects may leave the frame but still sit in between it and the threshold of your television's plane. Just a very fascinating presentation. It begins in French and seems to transition to English by the midpoint. There are burned-in subtitles that I am guessing are Portuguese. I am not convinced it is important, though, to understand what is said in either language. As a narrative, it is sort of framed in an outline similar to 2001: A Space Odyssey. It seems to run through a kind of entertainment-based history from primordial through growth and then a type of death and rebirth. The marriage shown at the beginning might be suggesting that society is in union with its entertainment. Ever notice how people can go on defending their favorite show or music as if they are defending the honor of a wife? It brings to mind how heroin addicts will talk in sexual terms about their needle. If I interpret right, it might be suggesting death is something akin to an overdose. Now, finally, we are given to the longest film of this collection, called Lisbon Revisited. Now, at first glance, I also considered skipping this one, as it just looked like it would be an ugly and meandering journey. But I waited until I was in a meditative mood, settled in, and was pleasantly surprised by how enjoyable it turned out to be. Now, it is ugly. No argument there. The use of false colors gives the appearance of a 70s-era hellscape, consistent with something out of a Ralph Bakshi movie. To my surprise, it displayed very well in 3D. I wondered if it even enhanced the stereo effect. There were many deep details in the landscape that I feel would not have been noticed if it was in a real color. There are moments where we are watching a bird walk across some concrete, and its shadow took on the appearance of animated paint. In the same moment, you can also see reflections off of some wet spots that in the false color seem more like cracks in reality rather than mere water. One of my misjudgments was that this was going to be an hour of shaky nature shot, but in fact there is significant manipulation of the lighting, wind, and even smoke for dramatic effect. You will find a still shot on a branch, which our stereo eyes readily adjust to, and then the light will move while the camera stays put, obscuring some parts and highlighting others, changing the feel of the moment to coincide with the poetic narrative. Various voices are used to communicate various prose in that narrative. It switches between 3 languages, so subtitles are constant, and perhaps that's my main complaint, is those titles are unfortunately misplaced in stereo, interfering rather than highlighting the scenes. But I did find the narration fairly compelling, suggesting that what we were witnessing was a point of view of something lurking. Perhaps a demon on the outskirts of civilization, looking in from the trees, both scorning and yet attracted to society all at once. Now, the animal nature of how the point of view scurried around and the use of macro 3D, showing bugs in great size, brought to mind a theory I once heard, that what the ancients called demons were what we know today as parasites, like this thing is hitching rides between various woodland creatures. Look up pictures of parasites and then look up ancient drawings of demons. It's compelling how similar they are. In the modern day, it's been found that parasites in cats will cause mice to lose their fear and make themselves available for dinner. What might then their effects be on our own brains? And is this why cats were venerated in Egypt? Were they considered a conduit to these microscopic demon gods? The narrator at one point even declares itself an interpreter of nature, a rather sly description of possession. Consistent with the parasite theory, this narrative does run into what you might consider a sex-death conclusion. And it's been suggested that one thing people infected with parasites and demon-possessed have in common is a preoccupation with promiscuity. Perhaps it's just a desire to spread their gods around. There's no explicit imagery in this short. No one appears on camera, almost as if the parasite is dead and more longing for the life it once had.